everybody. Welcome to the Thursday Checkdown. And normally you would be seeing Greg Kellogg, Hall of Famer here, but he's traveling. And so we are going to do our best to put on an entertaining show, informative show. We've got really great guests tonight. We've got two, in fact, and we normally bring them up before after we introduce them. But hey, listen, we're all falling apart. So you could. There's no surprise at who we've got tonight.
I can remove him if you want to.
No. Tipp, first of all, Tipp, why don't you say hi and remind folks where you're normally found?
Oh, what's up, guys? So I'm Tipp. I'm great to be here again with the Sports Affiliation. I work with the Sports Affiliation, also with Football Guys and Roto Ballers, but it's not about me tonight. We got Dustin here, Dustin Ludke, and then we got my guy Jeremy, Jeremy with FTN, and also Beyond the Chalk as well, man. It's so good to have both of you guys here. Dustin, can you tell everybody where we can find you, and then we'll start getting into this show?
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at the DUnit13. That's the best place to hit me up. Or you can find all my written content over at fftoday.com this year.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Jeremy, man, look, it's been a long time. I've talked to you several times on the X and Twitter Spaces and things like that. And, man, tell us, everybody, what you're doing, because you're putting out content daily, man, and with FTN. So talk to us about that and Beyond the Chalk.
Yeah, so, I mean, rebuilding a Twitter account because people liked my account better than I did. So that's cool. But, so I wanted to change the name anyway. So we got to do that, Other than that, yeah, a ton of rookie scouting guides over at FTN. Just different reports on pretty much a ton of players. Got a good portion done. Going to keep pushing some of them out as well here as we go, probably through the next month or so. Try and get the top 50 to 60 guys that really have some fantasy value. It's a little lighter class, but we'll get through some of those. Dynasty podcast finally kind of re-kicked that back off. Yeah, actually last night. So we have that as well, the FTN Dynasty podcast, and then other than that, Beyond the Chalk, going to have some different little articles. There's some rankings, all the dynasty rankings and stuff like that's overall also at FTN Fantasy. So easiest way I usually say is follow me on Twitter, Popes_FF now. And I post links there. Blue Sky, whatever.
Now, hold up. Because Jeremy is underselling one of the best things is he's got a nice little Discord going.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
That has been great. It's hopping. I'm in there. We got some chat going on. So if you want to get in
on occasion,
Beyond the Chalk Discord, we're trying to build it up.
We're giving it a shot.
Hit Jeremy up or hit me up on Twitter. We'll get you guys in there.
Yeah, we're giving it a roll. We're trying this thing solo. I don't know how it's gonna go.
Well, you know what? Speaking of a roll, man, we're going to talk tonight about the NFL Combine. Jeremy just told you guys that he is enthralled in these rookies, so we can't wait to talk about these rookies. And it's time for us to make a little prediction. We're going to see where these rookies could possibly land, and so each of us, myself, Rick, and Dustin, are all going to select landing spots for these players, Jeremy. Okay. Now, if you agree, then, give us your best analysis on that player's location and for a fantasy aspect. But again, if you disagree, tell us you disagree. Say, hey, you know what? No, that's a stupid place for him to go. Let us have it, man. Let everybody know where you think that player should be. Now, these players that we picked are totally random groupings. So don't think that this is where we're ranking these players. It's not. It's totally random how we group them. So, all right, fellas, let's go out and play.
Before we do that, Tipp, though, we had some pretty big news recently, and both of our guests are big fans of one of the two teams that was involved in a trade.
So wait, what team would that be?
Well, I don't know, but again, there's it was a big trade for actually both teams. I mean, so why don't we go ahead and get their initial impressions? Obviously, it has to play out. And there's other moves that are going to be made, but why don't we go ahead and dive into the trade that happened where the Buffalo Bills acquired DJ Moore, a wide receiver, because everyone's been saying they need to get a wide receiver, and they gave up a pretty high draft pick, a second-round pick, and also they get a fifth back, I guess, in the trade too. But why don't we go ahead and let's talk a little bit about that trade. So, Dustin, why don't you kick us off with that?
I have mixed feelings. I am happy the Bills finally went out and did something. We have not seen them do much especially in the wide receiver. They've taken shots, Keon Coleman. I'm happy they did something. This seems to me though like a Hail Mary, Brandon Beane trying to like salvage his job because I thought he should have been fired when they fired McDermott. My issue is this is a Beane move. It's these guys who are past their prime. We saw it with Von Miller, Joey Bosa, Brandon Cooks. We're getting these guys past their prime. We're paying kind of prime prices for them. I think it's a good trade, not a great trade. It seems very short-sighted. You're getting a guy will be 29 next month. I don't know how much more years he has. I think he's, like I said, past his prime. So I think it's an okay trade. I just don't think it's a great trade.
Okay, Jeremy, give us your thoughts.
So
Jeremy, I need you to sound a little bit more happy. No, Jeremy. Now this is they finally got your guy a guy.
Okay, let's be honest. All right.
Yeah.
I like DJ Moore. I think he fits the way that I looked at it. So just recently during the week, they had Josiah Trotter and Chris Bell in for visits. Those are probably two guys they were looking at around pick 60. So my assumption is either one of two things happened. They didn't totally love those visits, or historically, in what I've heard from Beane and them, as far as like during draft interviews, stuff like that, typically it seems like they have weird ratings on players, by like the pick that they're at. Like they're always like, yeah, we don't have any more first round graded players. And they're like at pick like 20. And you're kind of like, some other teams do. So it's kind of always seems a little weird of where they value some of these players. So for me, I think kind of maybe what happened, and with the timingness of the move and everything, I think it felt like we don't really like Trotter. We don't really like Bell, or maybe they're like, okay, they're solid, but we could also get DJ Moore and look somewhere else in the top of the draft. I really think they probably liked Casey Concepcion. They like Tate. They like Tyson. But in order to make that move, I mean, the market, look at the market. People like the Eagles are asking for like a first and second for AJ Brown. Like the market's super high right now, and it will be. And when it comes to draft day, maybe it swings a little bit, but I think they need a ton of pieces on defense. They need a plethora of just moves to be made, even on offense. The interior offensive line is going to be potentially a mess. Like they need a lot. And this trade, although the second's a lot, it does surfacely seem like a lot. I saw some reports. I don't know how fast they'd have to do it, but I think they can kind of restructure his contract to open up a ton of cap space for them as well, which is another issue. They also get the 5th round pick, so they aren't really giving up another player. Yes, they're giving it up 3 rounds later, but they can still get the same amount of players in the draft. And I think ultimately we saw the combine. I think Casey Concepcion had a really good day. You're looking at that second tier, and I think they're probably a little scared of the big questionable receivers at this point after Keon Coleman went south. So they're probably looking at it like, okay, Denzel Boston, Malachi Fields, that's the territory we're going to be at 20 something. And they're like, don't love it. And I bet you they really liked, Thiaman had a good day at safety. Like there's some good safeties, corners, linebackers that may fall to them. And they may have looked at it like, we can get DJ Moore established. We have a 3-year window. He is older, can produce. We're going to win now. We can get a defensive player in round 1 that really impacts the game more than the receiver position in this offense. We're still in a bit on Keon. Like, I think they look at it as in, we need to make the move. This makes sense. We have that pick. DJ Moore can come in day 1 in this offense, run it, be the field stretcher. Live on Khalil Shakir, Kincaid, Cook. Like, it's not ideal. It seems heavy on the surface. I just think when it comes down to it, they probably thought, what better would we get at pick 60?
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't like what's there. Typically I feel like they don't love the second round. They like those guys later. We see them hit on those 4th, 5th guys pretty often, at least in the past regime. So that's probably the direction they went. Like on the surface, yeah, it doesn't look great. Like a 29-year-old guy for the second round pick, but The Bills
Well,
also
what-
track record of drafting is not great. So
I think we can all agree. I don't think they're finished. And Dustin and Rick and I were talking about it. We were talking about whether they go for one of these rookies that are, shown well in the combine, or if they go for an accelerated process and try to get one of these stud wide receivers that are out there, or that could be a stud wide receiver on this team as well. So there's a lot more that needs to be done. We can all agree upon that. I don't think that they're finished just with DJ Moore. At least I hope not.
Yeah, I think they have to add someone else. I think they have to bring in. At some point, you can't just go, we're not the Rams, where we can just say, F those picks, we'll just take older guys and we'll try to win this year, next year. I think there has to be some future. Jeremy, let me ask you this question, because I had this conversation with a buddy of mine. What's the line? What's the stat line for DJ Moore? Where you're, at the end of the year, you go, yeah, that was worth it. What's the stat line for him that you're like, yes, that was worth it? Because I said 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns.
I don't think I really have one, to be honest.
Okay.
I think for me, it's going to come down to moments within the season of
Okay.
there needs to be a play made, and can he make the play?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I feel like that's
that.
where it was last year. Like,
Yeah.
You needed it in quite a few games that ended the wrong direction. You could have definitely used it in the Broncos game. You could have used it in the Jacksonville game that they managed to get out of. Like,
yeah.
I think when it comes down to it, 1,100 yards, it sounds great, but ultimately when it comes down to it, they have one mission, and that's to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm not setting something.
And usually with big trades like this, there's two sides of the trade, and I think Greg asked a question in the chat where what impact we see this have on some of the other players on the Chicago Bears side, and he specifically called out Luther Burden, but I think we're also how does this impact, say, Colson Loveland?
Yeah, I think it's a huge bump for all those guys. I think those guys were already on the trajectory upwards anyway. I mean, DJ Moore was just not used in that offense very well last season. So I think if you liked Luther Burden before, you love him now. If you loved him then, you're even loving him more. And so I think they're probably just they should have great seasons. I mean, good, really solid seasons all across the board. Roma Dunze, Burden and Loveland, even Cole Kmet should have a decent season. So I think it's wheels up for the Bears. I think they're making a push to compete in that division and win that division every season now for the next 5 years.
So
DJ Moore just wasn't a fit.
Are we going to see all sorts of tweets about this Luther Burden SZN or whatever
season? Yes.
One thing I'll say about Luther Burden is, I just did a mock draft with some friends, and I saw Luther Burden go in the 6th round. I think right now that is like where you're like, people with all of this news that just came out, the way he ended the season, at least on week 17 last year, I think that you're going to see a Luther Burden that's going to be utilized heavily in this offense. I don't know if he's going to get a full complement of like the snappers or the snap percentages, but when he's out there, he's going to be used. And so I think that they're going to utilize him the correct way now, and they're not going to be splitting this timeshare. Hopefully he stays healthy, but wheels are all the way up for Luther Burden.
Yeah, and that assumes that the Bears don't decide to look at adding an additional wide receiver to the already decent receiving room.
Yeah. Now, Rick, we also had another trade too, and it involved your Texans. So we're going to talk a little bit about that one too, because another 29-year-old or about to be 29-year-old David Montgomery was traded. And I want you to hear look, I've been seeing what the players' reactions are, right? And Amon-Ra St. Brown is sick about this trade. He is not happy that David Montgomery's gone. Now, on the other hand, Woody Marks is like, hey, he's a hell of a back. I'm excited to have him back. He's going to kill his fantasy value. But what is your outlook on David Montgomery being a Texan?
I mean, I'm excited. I mean, again, they needed to beef up the running back room. From what we understand, Joe Mixon may have, shot his foot off. I mean, there's some questionable thing that happened to him where there's no expectation that he's going to play this year. And so, and Woody Marks must also know that, because if they didn't get after Montgomery, they would have gone after another running back regardless, and maybe even drafted one relatively high up. Of course, their troubles always are around the offensive line. They gave up a offensive lineman to in the trade. They also gave up another offensive lineman in a separate deal. But again, they just re-signed Brown as offensive tackle. I think they like Ursery a lot. I think that they're going to build out a better balanced offensive line. They were terrible on the running plays, perhaps not as bad on the passing protection. But I think that, again, I think this is a move that they were going to make. Would I have preferred someone a little younger? Yeah. But, looking at the deals that the Texans have done the last couple of years, they added Mixon, the veteran power running back. They added Chubb, a veteran, injured a lot, power running back, and now Montgomery. So they obviously have a plan that they'd like to stick with. And, again, I think they're going to be the best team in this division. So I'm pretty excited for the year.
Now, Rick, before we get started, you did have some questions for the combine for Jeremy and possibly Dustin. So you want to go ahead and ask?
Yeah, because I know we're going to hit on some specific players and dive into more detail. But just in general, what was your overall, analysis of the combine? Were there players that kind of, just rose through the ranks that you weren't expecting, or that, were there some that disappointed you?
Yeah, I think Jeff Caldwell is a big one that kind of really took advantage of his opportunity. We don't see too many people run and do every single drill anymore. It's kind of become one of the great things of the past of what the combine used to be. He did that, and he pretty much excelled. A little bit of like that Savion Williams type of combine, though, where it's like, okay, this guy is big, athletic type of freak, but what's it going to translate to? So a guy that I definitely want to resurface on. I think he pushed himself up and probably will get drafted now. I feel like he was probably a guy that was outside of that territory as far as the NFL draft went. So we'll see that. Obviously, if he does any pro days, private workouts, stuff like that, I think he's one of the bigger winners. I feel like overall, though, I think the combine, there wasn't much that surprised me, to be honest. I feel like everybody kind of did what was expected. I feel like some guys really looked good that you expected to look good. The whole Carnell Tate saga is a whole different story that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I think Emmett Johnson was a little surprising. I didn't expect him to test as badly as he did.
Yep.
Other than that, like I said, it just kind of felt normal. I was surprised, I guess, like Stowers and Sadiq setting like combine records for the position, but I expected both of those guys to test really well. So like, I'm not like, wow. It is wow, but like, it wasn't mind blowing, I guess, in that aspect.
I agree. I think we saw a lot of what we expected to see. We saw a lot of guys not participate, which we expected. We saw a lot of guys who we knew were athletic freaks be athletic freaks. I think for me, the one name that stood out was John Michael Gallenborg, tight end from Wyoming, like just tested crazy from a smaller school. We're not used to seeing Wyoming being a football factory outside of, certain players. So it was interesting to see some of the tight ends and some of these guys take advantage of, like you said, with Caldwell, we'll talk about it a little bit later, take advantage of other guys not testing, so they seem like they're higher up in the ranks than maybe they would. And so I think this is where the combine and how we analyze the combine has to start shifting of, okay, this is how good they tested this year. This is how good they tested over the past, where they would have been the past 5 years. But yeah, I think it was very interesting. I think the interviews, there were some interesting takes. I think Diego Pavia was Pavia was interesting with his like, I've got 365 days to mature. It's like, nah, man, you don't. you've got 50 days till the draft, so you better figure that out. So there's some of those things where I think there's some interesting. Obviously, the Lemon, take and him being kind of squirrely in his interviews. I think there's a lot of just interesting tidbits. I don't know if they matter, but they definitely were talking points because we saw less people test. I think some of these more things were talking points because there's less testing going on.
It did seem like Lemon, was really the focus of what were the interviews that hurt a player as opposed to help the player.
Yeah.
there was also the Pavia one was interesting because he's got what do you say 365, but how long will it take him to grow like 4 inches? Because
yeah, I mean you already have concerns.
Small.
Yeah, when you already have red flags about your height and size, you don't necessarily want red flags about your maturity.
Yeah, no, that's true. And before we get started, guys, you like, subscribe, follow not only the sports affiliation, follow FTN, follow Dustin, follow Rick Rasuelis, myself. I'm Tipp Major. Look, we are about to talk about landing spots. And Jeremy, this is where you can be objective. You can give us your full-on take if you think these players are going to the landing spot that we choose. And again, don't be afraid to give it to us and tell us that is not a good spot. And then also just know that these players are completely random in this grouping. So, Rick, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, his name came up already, but again, Carnell Tate of Ohio State, had a great career. Didn't, I guess, run the fastest 40, and so naturally everyone started throwing panic flags. But he seemed to run plenty fast enough in the games that I saw, at least. Why don't you tell me a little bit about him and where you see him? Again, the notes I originally wrote, I was thinking, do you think he might be a target for the Buffalo Bills? But that's probably not happening anymore. But what team do you see him being a good landing spot?
Am I leading this off here?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty landing spot proof. I mean, he's your traditional kind of X receiver perimeter guy. I guess you're going to want a spot that has a quarterback that can stretch the field pretty well. We saw that a little bit at Ohio State as far as the underthrown type of ball situation where he's not being able to necessarily, stay in stride because he has a little bit more build-up speed than long speed. So the 4.5, even if it was a 4.47, people would have been happier, but it's the same. And it's just going to be kind of I think you're looking at a guy that's going in the top 10, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. As well as, I guess, if you look at it in an approach of what teams will really do, my guess is probably Kansas City's in play. I don't want it as a Bills fan because, our evilness of that, but I don't mind it. Good for them. It happens. We have TG Moore besides, anyways. We're going to win the Super Bowl now.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Carnell Tate, I think Kansas City makes sense. That's probably where you're going to be looking at him. Obviously Vegas won't take him. The Jets probably won't. Arizona probably not. Tennessee maybe. I could see Tennessee being decent. Cam Ward kind of showed some signs last year. Dable's got the offense and kind of can be the field stretcher in that situation. I've definitely seen some mocks with the Giants and the Cleveland Browns, obvious options as well, just not as ideal. Obviously, he would be competing with neighbors in New York, and Cleveland is just Cleveland. So, I think Kansas City is probably the favorite front runner for me. Obviously, fantasy-wise, just makes sense. Big perimeter receiver, something that they really haven't had under Patrick Mahomes' time, but a guy that definitely can get the ball from Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
so.
And Dustin, you obviously still see him as one of the top 3 and whatever that order might be.
Yeah, he's a top 3 wide receiver. I think he's going to be a top 10, top 12 pick in the draft. So,
all right, Dustin. So give us your player to see his potential landing spot.
All right, the Jets have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. I think they use one of them on quarterback Drew Aller from Penn State. He's big. He's got prototypical size, and you can't teach that. I think he goes to the Jets. They take him later in the round, and they spend those picks on other things. I think Drew Aller to the Jets makes a lot of sense, and maybe the second round.
Jeremy, what do you think on that?
Second round would be wild. I think it makes sense. I'm a big Drew Aller fan. I think that, the injury kind of hurt his chances of really getting a huge name through this class. It was not the best start either. The whole thing that kind of just crumbled in Penn State doesn't help either. You're seeing that even at the running back position with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. So it's kind of a whole system that just fell apart on these guys, unfortunately, in his final season. Then the injury, as much as a long-term game, it's a short-term memory for many of these guys as the draft comes closer. So I think being out on the field was a nice thing for him in the combine, at least throwing the football.
Yeah.
I think it's a low investment, high reward type of situation. He's a little bit, I guess you would call it squirrely. You know, he kind of gets a little like panicked at times. He really is needs some teaching as a mechanics. He's really an arm thrower. If you watch a lot of it, he hardly steps through the ball, which leads to inconsistent mechanics because you're just chucking the football. You know what I mean? Like it's backyard football quarterback. It's like any of us going out there and, you know, not really stepping through the ball. When he does step through the ball, he drives the ball well. It's fairly accurate. It's building blocks type of stuff for him. I think that if the right team drafts him, he gets in the right spot. There's some upside there. For the Jets, it makes sense. They've had quarterback purgatory. They're not in a spot they're going to get a very good one in this draft. Maybe Ty Simpson in round 2 if they wanted to go that route, but he may even sneak into 1 depending on some teams. So another guy they could be in, though, if they want to trade up, like Dustin said, they have plenty of picks early, but if they want to just sit tight, I think I like that. It's a good spot. I don't think it's like the best for him, best chance to opportunity, but we've seen the Jets ruin quarterbacks. So
they have, but I think Frank Reich being there now can really help out. You know, former quarterback.
All right, that's just you just like the Bills. That's all.
I do. Well, of course I do. I love Frank Reich. He's one of my favorite players ever.
Oh, I love it. The Bill. Let's go, Bills Mafia.
So you just followed it. No. Just joshing.
So since we're talking to Jets, we're gonna keep talking about your division rival. This year's Biletnikoff recipient was Micaiah Lemon. You know, 5'11", 195 pounds. He chose not to run the 40, but he's more twitchier than a burner. I think he'll help the Jets as well. I think that the Jets are looking for somebody like that. You know, you've already seen some of the interviews and some people making fun of that and everything. I just think the kid just wants to play ball, and that's really all he's worried about. And he seems like a furious competitor. But Jeremy, what do you think on that as far as him going to the Jets, and then who the hell is going to be their quarterback?
I think the Jets would be interesting with Garrett Wilson. I just don't see it like realistically happening. Like he's not going to. There's no way they're taking him at 2, especially after the combine. If like all the rumors are true of the bad interviews, like no way. And he's not falling to 33. So unless they trade back in, like maybe it's an option. I wouldn't hate the spot. Again, it's a spot that doesn't generate fantasy points. So unless they're bringing a quarterback in that can generate offense, you know, it just doesn't really make sense for me to love that spot for him. So I would be a little bit out on him. Like it's not a guy that I would avoid a full avoid just because of the talent. But at that point, depending on where you get spots from Tate and Tyson, like he could easily fall to 3. Like I feel like those 3 are very interchangeable at this point at the top of the draft. And honestly, I mean, Concepcion's going to be probably pretty close as well. I think one of his better spots in Buffalo would have been. So like, I think that's kind of maybe out. So now Concepcion might fall a little further from that group, but I think I don't love the Jets as far as their quarterback goes. Honestly, I think that they're probably in on taking a shot on Ty Simpson. Now the opposing option is they may just punt. Like they may take, like Dustin had mentioned, you know, Drew Allard. They could probably honestly get him on day 2, like late, like 3rd round, maybe even 4th round. You know, there's a lot of intriguing day 3 quarterbacks for them, even, you know, like Carson Beck, some of these guys that had good profiles for a while. Kate Klubnik's probably going to be back there. You know, they could take someone like that and roll the dice with that. Maybe they bring in Kirk Cousins and bridge it a bit. I don't think Kyler Murray will be in their fold. I think if anything, they punt this a little bit. They build a team around what's there, and then they just are bad and they get their quarterback next year in what should be a better quarterback class.
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins was a name I was going to throw out there as a veteran to bridge if they decided to go that route. I think he makes the most sense there.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. So let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about Group B. Rick, start us off.
Yeah, and one of my favorite players, Mike Washington, he's been getting a lot of buzz, and why not? He's big, he's fast, has decent hands, has good vision. Before the Texans traded for Montgomery, I was actually kind of hoping that they would be looking at Mike Washington. But obviously Love is, number one in the running backs, but where do you see Mike Washington? And do you see him as a possible landing spot, maybe like the Dallas Cowboys?
What do you think on that
Yeah,
one?
I think he's definitely in the conversation of running back 2 after the combine. I mean, he tested truly down to like that
Yeah.
old adage of like an athletic freak. Like it really kind of hit that territory. So I think he's in the discussion. I really don't think there's a clear cut running back 2. I think Jonah Coleman's a good option as that in that territory. A little undersized though, so I haven't heard too much as far as like when you're watching any of these mock drafts. Like he's not mentioned as much as you would think. Darian Price is obviously going to be in that conversation, but Washington, I think after that combine, really is going to start to skyrocket in some of these draft boards. As far as Dallas goes, I mean, he could probably beat out Javonte Williams, but I don't think they go there. They just paid Javonte Williams, and I don't think that would be their route. It would be nice, like if he had the backfield to himself. Like if Javante's not there, like it's a good spot. It's a running back factory as far as fantasy points go. I mean, they're always running inside the 5. Like it just kind of is a great spot if there's fantasy value, and he may still go there. I mean, we shouldn't nix it just totally because they signed Javonte. So a lot of these teams sign players just in case they don't get who they want in the draft. And we've seen Jerry Jones, when they took CeeDee Lamb, we're like, what are they doing? So there's that chance, I guess. But for me, I mean, I would definitely like him somewhere else. Just not really in on Dallas.
Nice. And how about you, Dustin?
Yeah, I think he's a great player. I mean, obviously he tested really well at the combine. One of those guys that came out of the combine that no one was really talking to headed into, and all of a sudden they come out, he's like, yeah, he's the wide running back 2. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in Detroit to kind of replace David Montgomery. He's got that kind of bruising ability to kind of pound you in the middle and then break off big runs. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just replace David Montgomery with a younger Mike Washington. But I think Dallas would be a stretch. I think they really like Javonte. I think they rewarded him with what he did last year. It'd be a great, like Jamie's saying, a great landing spot because Dallas does just produce a ton of running back fantasy points. I think I'd rather see Mike Washington somewhere where he can be either heavily in a rotation or the guy on his own. I don't want him necessarily, as a backup right now.
Yeah, I think you're looking at, like, honestly, and I'm going to say this. I think when you look at the draft board, like, Kansas City could be in play. Like, maybe that trade also, I mean, there's some corners in that territory as well, but they may skip on Love, or I remember hearing a report that Kansas City doesn't think that their Love's going to make it to that.
I don't think he'll be there,
And then after that comes out, they make the trade to get 29. So if they don't get the swing in free agency, and they're talking like they want a mid-range running back, like Tyler Algier territory money. So to me, seems like maybe they're intrigued by one of these running backs at 29. So if it is Washington, it may not be, but like Kansas City would be obviously really good at the back half. And I think Denver, again, another team that says they're going to make a swing, as well as Seattle at the back half. Like there's 3 good teams, and even Houston. I wouldn't rule Houston out still. They got David Montgomery, but we talked about it. He's an older running back. I'll kick back a little bit. I don't think that Washington runs as physical as you would totally expect. Like from what I watched, he reminded me a lot of like Najee Harris. Like he's way faster than Najee Harris, but he's a big guy that doesn't lean into as much contact as you would think for a guy that, like, when you read it 6 foot, like 230, like you're like, this guy's got to run through people. He has a little bit more of that like elusivity kind of to his game. Some of the more bigger backs that you're seeing come out, like he's not Bijan Robinson, but no one's Bijan Robinson. But again, a bigger back that you're like, there's probably some physicality to their game or more that you would expect. And that's personally what I took away from the ones I watched. I will probably dive back into it again before the draft, but I still feel like there's a lot left on the table as far as the physicality side goes from Mike Washington. So Detroit, maybe, but I don't think he's like that bruiser that David Montgomery is. I think they could go elsewhere. There's some later guys, but they still could. I mean, maybe they want to change it up. I don't know.
So you mentioned
for me. For me, it's gonna be Adam Randall, running back. He has some really good hands, and I like his route running. This year, looking at possibly getting passes from Aaron Rodgers. I mean, if he's still going to be a Steeler, we don't know how. He's going to wait till the last minute, of course. But hey, Kenneth Gainwell's most likely going to be gone. Last year, he caught more passes than DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf isn't a target hog. So where do you think about Randall landing with the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, it would be late. I think it's interesting. He's kind of one of those interesting case guys. Not super high on him. He's kind of like a discounted Antonio Gibson, like former wide receiver that's converted into a running back, kind of bigger, 6 foot, 220, 230 or something. I think he came in at around that territory. Wasn't overly exciting, still learning the position somewhat. I could see it. I don't know. Do you think that Pittsburgh's given up on Caleb Johnson like the last regime did? But that doesn't mean that McCarthy has, like it makes sense because you get him late. Like, I mean, throw darts at the wall in that running back room.
Absolutely.
Like, I agree that that's definitely a possibility and could be something. I just feel like he's similar to Caleb Johnson, like in that category of a little bit bigger, kind of not a full-on bruiser, but like a bigger guy, not overly fast. He's got better hands because he is that former wide receiver than say Caleb Johnson. But I'm not super high on Adam Randall. Let's put it that way. Like he may be a guy I would take some flyers on late in some deeper dynasty drafts. Now he gets drafted in the second round for some odd reason. Like maybe I'm more in, but like I think he's a day 3 guy, really late. He's not going to have the draft capital for many models. I think he'll be a guy that's under the radar. Probably worth it. I typically take shots on running backs later in rookie drafts, so I'll probably take a shot or two, really where it depends, but I'm not like overly joyed, and Pittsburgh wouldn't make me any happier if I'm being honest.
Hey, Dustin, early in the show, you mentioned a player that, I'll be honest, I don't know much about, so I was hoping maybe you could kind of fill me in a bit on Jeff Caldwell.
Yeah, so my landing spot for Jeff Caldwell is going to the Denver Broncos, kind of as a heir apparent replacement for Cortland Sutton. There's been some like vague tweeting from Sutton about his time possibly being done there. Caldwell was 6'5", 216 pounds. Ran a 4.31. A 42-inch vert. He's got arm. He's got arm and vert. So with his arm, his height, and between his arm like this height and his vert, you could throw the ball almost like 11 and a half feet and he'll catch it. That's his radius for catching. Is crazy. I think he could be the replacement for Sutton. Not this year. I mean, he gets drafted to be that. They keep Sutton, and he becomes the Sutton type in that offense in the future. And I think that could be a good landing spot for him.
Nice. Hey, and Jeremy, your thoughts on that?
I think Pat Bryant's their replacement, but I get your sentiment. Makes sense. They do have some 4th-round picks. Like I don't think he's going crazy high.
No,
even
he's not
after
going
that
crazy
combine.
high. No.
He's still a day 3 guy. He's worth that shot. I get that. He's a field stretcher. He fits in that offense, kind of what they want to do. You've seen him take shots on Troy Franklin. Bryant was a little bit out of their mold. That's why I feel like he's a little bit of kind of what they want. What Cortland Sutton has been, a little bit slower, bigger, kind of wins on the edge and the standard type of X receiver type routes. But he fits it. You've seen him take Marvin Mims. You've seen him Troy Franklin, some field stretcher type of receivers, which given his 40, I think he could be that, just a little bit bigger. So I wouldn't hate that spot. I think that Denver throws the ball enough we've seen it. These guys have popped up. It's hard to guess on which week it's going to be that set player. That's a different story for a different discussion. But I do think that that's a pretty good spot for him. I think that is a spot he could definitely get some opportunity. But
it'd be a late round pick. You're talking a day 3 guy, but I think it's someone that if he does go to Denver, I would draft him, 3rd, 4th round of my draft, stash him on maybe my taxi squad for a year and then see what happens. I think if Sutton were to get moved this offseason, I could, he gets drafted there. I think he could step in right away. I just like the size. He's got the size comparison to Sutton. So, those jump ball kind of athletes that I think would be great. But yeah, you're right. He does fit the mold. So I think it's an interesting spot for a late round guy who could be a sleeper for you guys.
All right, Rick, you're going to start us off with player group C. Who is that going to be for you?
A player that I'm interested in part because when Texas A&M, but Casey Concepcion. And one of the things that also makes me want to root for this player is that, I've gone through my entire life with a speech impediment, struggled work-wise as school-wise, and even doing this. He also has a speech impediment, so right off the bat, I tune into this. What are your thoughts on Casey Concepcion and where might he land? And Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on Casey Concepcion. I like Concepcion. I was really in on him for the Bills. I would have, if it means that they're out on a receiver in round one. I'm sad because I really kind of wanted Concepcion. I thought that was could have been a good fit in this offense. Honestly, DJ Moore-esque. I have him comped a little bit to like the Jaden Reed. Some people talk about Stephon Diggs, and I don't think he has the attitude in this game that Stephon Diggs had. Honestly, like a more comparable Diggs comp is like Skylar Bell. I don't know if you guys have paid attention to anything of Skylar Bell. To me, Bell seems more Diggs. I just thought that now he's not totally Jaden Reed, but there's some versatility to his game. And Reed was kind of similar to what Concepcion puts on tape at Michigan State. So like what Reed's become isn't what he was coming out. So it's not a hard comp. Like I don't love player comps, to be honest, but I really like Concepcion. And I think that he's a 3-level threat. He's good after the catch. There's some questions about his drops. I'm not overly worried. I don't think drops translate to the NFL. If it's a technique issue, then you have some issues, but it seems a little less technique to me in Concepcion's issues. So I'm not too worried about it. The quarterback play was atrocious. If it was not so bad, I mean, this guy may have led the NCAA in receiving. Like, there's some plays that you watch that you will never see because the ball wasn't thrown to him. But if you like tune into like some of the all 22s or something, or even there's some clips that I posted of just like he smokes guys in the end zone and he's wide open for a touchdown. It's just Tylen Green or I don't remember who's their quarterback. Why can't I think of this? Not Tylen Green. That's Arkansas. Who was it? Shoot, I don't remember. Either way, he could not throw the football to him or find him. So it is. Yeah, I'm in on Concepcion. I even think, depending on the landing spot, he very muchly edges close to those top three. I think the combine helped him a lot. And honestly, the Bills were my favorite spot. I think at this point, I've seen some mocks that say Denver as well in a trade up. Chicago could be in play. Cleveland in play at 24.
And a top 4, top 5 wide receiver. Virtually every team is going to want that. I mean,
yeah, like I think they're all in play. I mean, San Francisco would be really nice if the Bills are out. If he lands in San Francisco at 27,
and that's a need too.
Tons of opportunity. There's need there for them. Kind of fits their mold, like Ricky Parcell-esque, Brandon Ayuk-esque. Like probably not as physical as some of those guys, but really would fit, I think, in that offense very well, running like those crossing routes and everything that Shanahan does with his receivers. So I think San Francisco is probably my favorite now because I feel like the Bills are out. So that would probably be close to me, probably as the lead go. I mean, New England could be interesting. I don't know if he falls that far. If he does, I mean, it could be interesting. Obviously, they just got rid of Diggs. He would have plenty of opportunity for targets. But yeah, I think San Francisco is probably my front runner now at this point.
Nice. And I looked up the name. It was Marcel Reed,
Marcel Reed. That's it. Thank you.
Texas A&M.
I'm like, I'm trying to remember which one it was. I'm like, I know this name.
Dustin, why don't you go with the next player?
Yeah, I have a big shocker here that the Kansas City Chiefs just wait. They don't get someone in free agency. They don't pick someone early in the draft, a running back, and they wait instead and take Kentucky running back Seth McGowan later in the draft. He's got a good off-the-line speed, good catch radius. And Kansas City kind of has experience dealing with players with some, checkered past. So I think if it's a good fit for that aspect, so I can see Kansas City waiting and taking Seth McGowan later in the draft. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on that?
Could make sense. I'm not sold they're taking one early, so I will agree with you there. I don't know if McGowan makes sense. They just took Brashard Smith. You know what I'm saying? Kind of that same
Similar
type
mold,
of mold. I get the sentiment to it. I would think that they're probably like not waiting that long. I think they will probably like it, like Jadarian Price. They'll probably like I don't know, like a Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. If they wait, would be my guess. McGowan's interesting to me. Like I'm not in on it on the basis just of a kind of these converted receiver running back type styles just haven't translated. Like we got some good good years out of Antonio Gibson, don't get me wrong, but like the longevity of the career wasn't there. And you could argue he probably could have been removed from his role quicker than he was.
Yeah.
Washington kind of just held on hope, you know. So Kenny Gainwell is a guy that emerged this year, but why? Because the pass catching upside, and it wasn't overly the rushing. I mean, he had some good rushing capabilities this year as well, but that wasn't the prevalent reason he was fantasy relevant. So even in that offense, we've seen it. You know, we always go back to Jared McKinnon, this or that, and like they were viable, but very inconsistently viable. So again, I'd probably be out in that situation. I get the idea and the premise behind it. I'm probably pretty much a full out on like Seth McGowan, like maybe late again. If he goes to Kansas City, I'd be intrigued. 3rd, 4th round, you're just throwing darts anyways. Probably worth a shot in your rookie drafts, but I wouldn't be like, it's more a player than the landing spot. Like the landing spot probably helps him.
Yeah.
I just would probably still be kind of out.
And Tipp, you were going to talk about a Penn State running back.
Yeah,
and so far, why don't you tell us what you were going to talk about?
Yeah, so far I've been 0 for 2 with these players, and it's cool because I think on this one I'm going to hit. And, you know, you talked about running back Katron Allen, the bruiser from Penn State, will be replacing David Montgomery as Brad Holmes, the GM for the Lions, wants to get back to running the ball. They all want to get back to running the ball, and they're getting younger too. And it takes a little bit of pressure off of Jamar Gibbs. So I know that's not some of the teams that he's been focused on. He's been focused on Kansas City and I think even the Browns. But some of the guys at Football Guys and even myself agree that this could be a possible landing spot. What do you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, I think in the coming days, and this is what's going to happen throughout the next month and a half, like you're going to see trades, you're going to see free agency, things are going to change. At no point should you be very like hard set and hard pressed on some of these prospects of where they're probably going to go. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. If you would have told me that, 4 days ago, I probably would have been like, meh, doesn't really make sense. Now that makes 100% sense. Like they're not going to give Jahmyr Gibbs the whole workload. They're just not. Like, why would they? Like, yes, we can argue and say, oh yeah, he's going to explode and be even better. But like taking those pounding types of touches off of these running backs help them. And your team, again, they're still, yes, didn't do as well as they hoped last season, but they're still a Super Bowl hopeful team. So they need to keep Gibbs healthy for as long as possible. And I'm not saying just because he's going to get more, he's going to get injured. But he is a player that you want to keep fresh. So Katron Allen makes a ton of sense. I'm not a huge Katron Allen guy. He was effective. He did what he does, but he's David Montgomery. I mean, he's maybe arguably not as good. Like he isn't getting the draft hype that Montgomery got coming out, but he's that guy. Like he's going to get you what's there. He's going to maybe make a guy miss here or there, pick up a little bit extra yardage, but he's not going to go off script. He's going to hit the hole that you want him to hit, and he's going to do it effectively. So that's pretty much probably what Detroit wants. They don't need, everybody wants a guy that's going to make guys miss and take it 50 yards, but they got Jahmyr Gibbs who does that from 70. So it makes a ton of sense. I think in the last few days, it really came to fruition. And I think it's a smart call out because just of where they're located, even like 50 seems about right. A little early for him. He probably falls into the 3rd, which if that's the case, I don't even think they don't have a 3rd round pick. So that gets a little dicey, but they could take him at 50 or they could trade into the 3rd.
Yeah, and he has
he might make 118, but they do have 2 fourths, so.
And he has a nose for the end zone. I mean, the guy I think averaged something like 10 plus touchdowns in his career.
Both of those guys. Those touchdown numbers are absurd.
Yeah.
When I was plugging the data in for like Nick Singleton too, you're like everybody like hates him, and it's just like you go back and look and like he just has like I think he had like 30 some touchdowns or more. Wow. I'm like, geez Louises, Penn State.
And
That's
he
what they
does
do.
everything.
You know, their receivers don't score. Someone's got to score. So it's a running back.
Now, Rick, you took my play. You took my guy, man. You took Fernando Mendoza from me, but I'm happy we're talking about him. I think he's going to be a Raider. I'm excited about it. So let's talk about player group D. Fernando Mendoza is your first player, Rick.
Well, actually, no. I was saying that after Mendoza and maybe Ty Simpson, you can throw like a bubble around or a circle around a group, and we mentioned a couple of them: Drew Alar, Carson Beck, Klubnik, and Nussmeier. Will all seem to be kind of like in that next. Well, I need a quarterback. They were quarterbacks that were successful earlier in their season or earlier in their careers, and maybe they are able to be at least a QB2 maybe. But what are your thoughts just on the quarterback position once you get past Ty Simpson?
Yikes. Yeah, it's yikes. I like the guys. I think there's a lot of buildable stuff. I don't think any of them are a long-term starter. I have a lot of them pegged as like maybe a developmental starter, more of like a spot fill-in type of guy. I think like Klubnik, spot starter. Carson Beck showed some good things in the right system. Could he be like Kirk Cousins or Geno Smith? Sure. I think Nussmeier probably is one that maybe has some potential. I mean, he was playing with an abdominal injury, and just think about like throwing a football at the college level. I'm sure that his tape looked the way it did because I'm sure that was terrible. So I could imagine that. So yeah, I'm not overly sold. I'll wait and see if someone get an intriguing landing spot that they could see some potential in year one to play some time. I would maybe take a shot later in Superflex, but like I don't see any of them surpassing or being a long-term plan for anybody. If someone goes to like the Rams, maybe just because you're thinking like, okay, they're going to learn from Stafford and maybe be the heir apparent, but there's not too much that I like. Like I said, I like Drew Alar. I would maybe take some shots on him just because of the dual threat physical abilities. Nussmeier really is going to rely on his passing, so he's really landing spot dependent. But after that, I'm not really in on Beck or Klubnik or Pavia or really any of these guys.
And this is kind of not we've been saying that the 26th draft for quarterbacks pretty dismal after and maybe even including the top two, but the 27 draft has some interesting targets. Not only Jeremiah Smith, who is probably going to be wide receiver one as soon as he touches the field, but any quarterbacks in the 27 draft that you're looking at, like maybe Sellers, of course, Manning, any others that are kind of interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard to really care at this point. Not care, but like last year we were talking about Drew Alar being the top quarterback at this time. So like Manning's obviously going to have the Manning hype. Sellers, there's some other guys. I think obviously Dante Moore is going to be one of the guys you talk about a lot. He was near the top of this class as well. So I think it's early to really worry too much about it. Like it's projected to be a pretty good class. You know, you've got Levitt's going to be in that class as well. I'm trying to think of the couple other guys that are going to be out there. So it's not off the top of my head. It's blanking, but I wouldn't get too worried about it. Like, just know that it is a better class. Like, if you're playing Superflex, like, take your shots because you never know. But Mendoza, Ty Simpson, definitely worth it. If the other guys fall into the third round, fourth round, and they have a decent landing spot in your rookie draft, take a shot. You never really know. But yeah, I feel like talking too much about the quarterbacks is a little bit. I think Sellers, Manning, Dante Moore will probably be three that hold their value. So I'm comfortable with those guys, but the rest we don't even know. And we don't even know if they're going to come out. You know, we were seeing the NIL and stuff. People are staying a little bit longer. So
Got it.
All right. Dustin, you got a wide receiver, and he's not my cousin. So When you hear it, you'll probably get the joke, everybody. So go ahead and tell us about the Wisconsin Badger.
Yeah, guy I'll be watching tomorrow at the Pro Day. Vinny Anthony, the second. I think he goes to the Seattle Seahawks probably in the 6th round, a late round guy who can replace kind of what they brought in Rashid Shaheed to do last year. Some sneaky speed, but also the return game skills. He's not going to be forced into duty, heavy rotations right away, but he gets to learn from JSN and Cooper Kupp for a year. But I think as a late round guy in the NFL draft, someone you can scoop up in your last round or possibly off waivers in your fantasy draft, I think he could have some sneaky upside if he lands with Seattle.
Yeah, and they've got some great young wide receivers like Troy Horton looks really like he's ready, and Cody White. I mean, they've got some really interesting young players, but again, you never can have too many talented wide receivers.
Yes.
So.
Agree.
Yeah.
Although he's not supplanting Torrey Horton, Dustin.
No, he's not supplanting Torrey Horton, but I think he could be a guy, who gets the return yards, who's got a little bit of speed, who, will be a hard to predict, splash play, big spike weeks every day this year.
Great best ball guy.
Yeah, great best ball guy, but I think 2027, 2028, especially, he'll be a guy who might see heavy rotation in that offense, replacing what they basically brought Shaheed in to do. I think his return skills gets him on the team. And, if you play with return yards, could be one of those guys that gets a ton of return yards for you, too.
Didn't mention it earlier, but this just reminded me. Like, Casey Concepcion, if he falls, would be probably really nice in Seattle. I'm just saying. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Playing alongside JSN, takes over Cooper Kupp's role, does the returning. He pretty much is a little bit of Rashid Shaheed. I'm just saying.
Yeah, a little bit.
Popped in my head.
All right, so
I
got a big wideout. Jacoby Lane will finally be the big receiver Lamar Jackson's been needing in that red zone. So that's why I picked for him to go to the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think on that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I like it. I think Jacoby Lane's a little bit underrated. I think everybody's in love with Mekhi Lemon, but Jacoby Lane was pretty solid for the Trojans here over the last few years. I think he does a lot of nice things well. I think he's a very good perimeter receiver with some upside. I would feel like I'm slightly ahead on the consensus with Jacoby Lane through the process thus far. I think the combine was good for him as well. He kind of showed over that overall athleticism that he does offer. The Baltimore landing spot is pretty solid. Like, I'm not upset. I'm not floored. I wouldn't really be like pushing him way up and making him a must grab. I would dabble in a couple of my drafts with him. I just think Baltimore's dicey. Obviously, they're going to be a whole new offense. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Lamar's shown that he can throw the football, so like we can axe that old narrative that he can't throw. But it's just going to be interesting to see how it folds out because they still have Mark Andrews, and like Mark Andrews is their red zone guy. He trusts him. He gets it to him. And they've had Hopkins for a few years, and like Hopkins is a shadow of what he is, but they still didn't even really use him in the red zone in that capacity. Obviously, when you have Derrick Henry, it's a little bit easier to just turn around and hand the football off or play action to Mark Andrews. So it could be interesting to see how the offense unfolds. I do like the spot there in Baltimore. I think that I will be in on Lane, depending on most spots. Like there wouldn't be a spot that I'd really be out, I guess, on Jacoby Lane, unless it was like, I don't know, maybe like Denver or something where it's like there's a lot of receivers. I'm trying to think of a better one that would be that they have good. Oh, like no, because the Rams would be the heir apparent. But you know, I'm everywhere. Never mind. Change my mind.
Now, Dustin, we're going to go ahead and let you finish with the last player that you want to choose from. And then we're going to close up the show. So, Dustin, tell us who your player is.
Yeah, I have the Philadelphia Eagles taking tight end Michael Trigg from Baylor to replace Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert had the 5th most red zone targets for tight ends last year. Trigg's got a massive wingspan, the length to kind of replace him. I think it's a good fit there. Jeremy, what do you think about Michael Trigg going to the Eagles?
Yeah, they need a tight end.
You know, I dislike Michael Trigg. I don't know. I get it. Like, the allure's been there. He's been around forever, and everybody's been talking about Michael Trigg forever as, like, the next great thing at tight end. I just don't see it. I think it's a good spot. Like, they're going to need somebody to replace Goddard. If it went that direction, you got early draft capital. I mean, you kind of got to believe a bit into it. So it's a good spot. Like I think the landing spot's a good call out. They're going to probably do that. Tight end to some consent. I really think they could be in on Sadiq early. I don't know how much they value the spot. Truthfully, because they don't throw it a lot and they already have the problems with AJ Brown thinking he doesn't get the ball enough, which he really doesn't probably. Devontae Smith doesn't get the ball a lot. Like you have these issues where it's like I could see them consolidating and kind of like bringing in a budget type of friendly deal, which might be Michael Trigg. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Later in the draft, that could make sense to me. I just don't like Trigg as a player. Like I just probably wouldn't really go that route. I think the landing spot is, if you believe in Michael Trigg, the landing spot is a good spot. So I'll go that route with that one.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, look, guys, that's the show for tonight. And we love to thank our guest, our audience, Jeremy, Dustin, Jeremy with FTN and Beyond the Chalk, Dustin with FF Today. Look, we thank you guys so much. We thank the producers in the back, Iggy and JC as well, for putting on the show. Even though we produced it, they still do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. But before we go, Jeremy, Dustin, please take a second to plug any of the things that you're working on. We see the work that you're doing, but let everybody else know the work that you're doing as well.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was gonna, dang, he beat me to it. I was gonna let him go first. Thank you for having me on, first of all. Second of all, Twitter at Popes_FF. Blue Sky is at Popes FFH. Those are probably the two easiest spots to find most of the links. If you want FTN Fantasy, sign up over there. I have mostly there is kind of rookie scouting guides or the FTN Dynasty podcast, and then rankings and stuff will all be over there as well. And then, like Tipp had mentioned, Beyond the Chalk, it's a Substack. You could subscribe over there. I put a little bit more article work and stuff like that there. But again, either the Blue Sky or the Twitter is the easiest spot to go ahead and get the access, as well as there will be a rookie guide. I was hoping to get it out earlier this week, but, you know, as I was talking to these guys before I jumped on here, we got a baby on the way and another one. So my life gets busy at night. And depending on how tired I am, it depends on how long I can work after they go down. So, yeah, hopefully at the end of the week. But
well, guys, thank you again so much for being on the show. Next week, we will have John McCree
talking IDP and
talking ID. I know Rick is going to be excited. Iggy's going to be excited for this. I'm starting to get excited about IDP too. It's fun. It's actually a little bit. And last year was my second year playing it. I'm not going to say my record, but second year playing it. I'm getting better. So now that I'm getting with these advanced players like Rick, like Iggy, and John McCree now, like Macri, now it's like I'm going to be a really badass IDP player now. And we've got some more IDP players coming and people coming on the show as well. So tune in to the Sports Affiliation. Peace. We're out.